Lecture quiz number 21 is exploring demographic data in terms of race and ethnicity. What is race? As previously discussed, race is a social construct. In the history of the United States, Congress and our courts have determined who qualifies as white dozens of times, as well as who falls into other, quote, race categories. Your first question for the lecture quiz is, which of the following statements best describes the sociological perspective on race? In your supplemental reading from Roedinger, the finding was that people we think of as white were not considered white 100 years ago. Here are some images of people who in the past would not be considered white. Pete Sampras is Greek, Andre Agassi is Armenian, Michael Chang is Thai, Monica Seles is Serbian. Interestingly, the person on top who has two pictures, one of her in 1967, another one of her in 2015, is Raquel Welch, who hid her ethnicity until late 2000s when she decided to come out as Latina. If race is a social construct, why do we still use it? Just because race is ambiguous doesn't mean racism or race differentials don't exist, though the data suggests there are racial differences and that they are changing. In this chart, the example is of education level completion rates by race from 1957 to 2008. We can see in general there is a trending increase of educational level completion in both high school and four-year colleges. But we can also see that whites complete at higher percentages than Black populations, although the difference between white and Black completion rates in high school have become much more narrow over time. The next group of slides that we'll be looking at are about racial differences in the United States, some over time and some at a specific location and specific time. We will be looking at class standing in terms of educational attainment, wealth, the wealth gap, incarceration, and joblessness. The link between race and class is so strong that the two are often conflated or become fused, as you may notice in the next few slides. We will also be looking at health outcomes. I have just chosen a few, including marijuana use, childhood asthma, infant mortality, and birth rate. This chart is a comparison of all enrollment rates by race and ethnicity for two different years, 2011 and 2020. The purpose of this sort of data is to see if there has been change. College degrees are increasing among all racial and ethnic groups, but white and Asian Americans are far more likely to hold a college degree or earn one than Black, Hispanic, or Native Americans. Earning a college degree involves two steps: starting college and finishing. Before the pandemic, white, Black, and Hispanic Americans were enrolling in college at about the same rates, especially when unemployment was high and jobs were hard to find. Asian Americans enrolled in college at much higher rates. The bigger distinction is that once a student has started college, the likelihood of making it through the coursework and tuition payments and ultimately earning a degree varies very much by race and ethnicity. Looking at different types of data, here are some findings from the state of Black students at community colleges, written by Commerdell and everyone in 2022. Here you'll notice there are quite a few facts that they pulled out. Their overall findings, though, is that from their analysis of the limited data on Black community college students, they find that while Black students are disproportionately represented at community colleges, the system does not produce equitable outcomes. Educational attainment is closely linked to how much people get paid. This particular slide is called African Americans are paid less than whites at every education level. This is average hourly wages by race and education, specifically for the year 2015, only looking at white and Black. You'll note that as education increases, so does the average hourly wages. However, white high school earns more than Black some college hourly. In this case, some college is characterized as having an AA or an AS. This data is not a snapshot in time, but instead has longitudinal data. It is the average family wealth by race and ethnicity from 1963 to 2022. You will note that while there is continual white data, there is a gap between where the Hispanic and Black and non-white, which are all grouped together, start, and also Asian has just 1 point of data in 2020. You will also see that Hispanic, Black, and non-white have significantly earned less than the white, and that while both populations are increasing in average family wealth, white wealth has increased significantly more than Hispanic, Black, or non-white. It is clear Asian families have higher wealth, but it is not clear the trend they were to get there. In this figure, the distribution of household net worth by amount of net worth and race of householder in 2021. Again, this is white non-Hispanic householders and Black householders. You will see at the top of the chart, upper left-hand corner, 0 or negative household net worth is at the top. And as you earn money, it actually goes closer down. So 1 million or over is at the bottom. That's a little strange, but that's the way they chose to do it. And you'll note that white non-Hispanic householders in general trend toward more wealth, while Black householders tend toward less wealth. And in fact, the greatest amount of concentration of Black householders have 0 or negative household net worth. This slide is about the racial disparities in prison incarceration rates in 2022. So the dotted white line is the total prison incarceration rate, which is in the United States, 355 per 100,000. There are entire classes about this subject because it is quite interesting. The United States tends to be a little bit more incarcerated than others, if there's such a word. You will note, however, that Black and American Indian or Alaskan Native and Hispanic are at much higher rates than 355 per 100,000, and that white and Asians are way below. Here we have annual marijuana use prevalence by race. This is a percent of the population who reported marijuana use in the previous 12 months, from 2001 to 2014. With the exception of 2001, in every subsequent year, more white people use marijuana than Black people. In these findings, it is that asthma is likelier in Black children. African American children are more likely to develop asthma than any other racial or ethnic group in the United States, according to the CDC data. This is the percentage of children with asthma from 2018 to 2020. 12.3% of Black children versus 9.3% of American Indian Alaskan Natives versus 6.7 Hispanic versus 5.5 white and 3.5 Asian Pacific Islanders. So, because we are interested in demography in particular, and we've noted the importance of keeping babies alive, here are 2 different types of graphs. On the left is Florida-specific infant mortality rates. In this case, it's 1 year, and it's comparing Black to white. It is actually 2018 that they're comparing. And you can see in every case, Black people had much worse outcomes than white people. On the right-hand side is for the entire United States, the infant mortality rate in 2021 and 2022 for comparison to see if things are getting better or worse. One thing that is clear is all the infant mortality rates by type are worse for African Americans than they are for whites. Recall in class, we discussed the racial identities in the United States, and then I asked you to look at the racial identities that were in your assigned country groups. For a moment, I'm going to discuss the Barukamen, which are Japan's, quote, invisible race, end quote. In feudal Japan, some people were assigned tasks that were considered tainted. Undertakers, butchers, sewage removal, jobs like that. These people started forming their own small villages and hamlets. They were required to wear designated clothing, slippers, and hairstyles, and they were banned from having rice field rights, and they had curfews. They were officially proclaimed emancipated in 1868. Today, we estimate there to be 1.5 to 3 million people who are of the Barukamen. This race would be similar. Imagine labeling all the homeless people in Athens as a separate race. That could be identified the Barukamen situation. 20% of Japanese today place a priority on family lineage, especially in cases when that person is of Barukan origin. 39% of Japanese citizens think it quote-unquote natural or unreasonable that the Barukan are in their situation, but can't do anything about it. For example, employment in reformed Barukamen areas is nearly 9% lower than the average for the rest of the area. The last question in this lecture quiz is, do you think race should be recorded for demographic purposes? You must state your position for or against recording race and support your position with 2 arguments.